Hello, hello, and welcome to the second day of this amazing summit. My name is Laura Gomez, and I am with the Striker Texas. I'm super excited to be here with you guys once again. And if you're not following the Striker Texas, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like, comment. We are local journalists covering the best and the greatest and all around Texas. So for today's summit, I'm super excited because obviously I love to talk about soccer and more when it has to do with women's soccer. So today's topic, without further ado, is will the USL's new league help inspire the next generation of women? And to discuss this topic, I have an amazing group of women with me here today. So I want to briefly kind of describe them. And then from there, I'll just have them introduce themselves and tell me a little bit about themselves. So first, we have Amanda Vandercort, which is the president of the USL Super League. We have Elisa Vicuna, which is a co-founder of the new USL-W club, Aurora, Minnesota, or Aurora, Minnesota. You'll tell me how to pronounce that later on. Sorry if I mispronounce your names. You know, my brain is bilingual. So we have Katie Goodman, who's the host of the United Women's League. She is also a player for San Antonio Athens. And finally, we have Liz Amanda, who is a player for Austin, is a player for the FC Austin Elite. So welcome, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. So I kind of want to go and just explain to our viewers that this is I want to keep it light, informative, professional, but just talk about soccer, women's soccer, which is I know that we love to do, right? So I kind of want to go around, let's say, the cyber room and kind of have you introduce yourselves and just kind of tell us a little bit about what you do and one of the reasons that you're joining us. So I want to go ahead and start with Amanda.
I was on the mute, so nice to see you
No
guys.
problem.
Thanks for having me, and it's so cool to be on this panel with players and a co-founder and journalists, all women doing great things in the game, and it's just a pleasure to be here. So yeah, my name's Amanda Vandercort. I'm the president of the USL Super League, which I know we're going to talk a lot about today. A little bit more here at the USL, I oversee the entire women's pathway. So the professional league, USL Super League, launching in 2023. And in addition, the W League, which launches this summer in 2022. So all the way through, a full pathway, which we're working to create here at the USL on the women's side. So a little bit maybe before I came to the USL, I was in Amsterdam. I was the chief women's football officer at FIFPro, which is the Global Players Union. So yeah, so I was representing the player side of the game around the world. And before that, I was at Major League Soccer for about 9 years. I was the vice president of fan engagement, so I oversaw all of our consumer marketing at MLS. Before that, I'm going backwards in chronological history, but it might be helpful for the
No, I
discussion.
mean
I,
yeah, we need to know.
I helped launch WPS, Women's Professional Soccer, which was the second
Okay.
women's professional league in this country. I was the head of social media and digital marketing back in 2008, 9-ish. But before that, I'm a coach, I'm a player, and I've been involved in soccer my whole life. So I'm excited to be here and learn from you guys on this call and share more of what we're doing at the USL and what we're building.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Katie, you want to take the spotlight in your amazing studio, which I'm jealous of?
Yeah, thank you. I'm a podcaster, so I gotta show up like a podcaster. I can't help it. And plus, I have 5 dogs at home, so it would have been chaos, pure chaos,
Oh, you beat
had I
me.
tried to do that there. So yeah, first off, I just want to say I'm already inspired by Amanda's story. I can't wait to hear Lisa and Liz Amanda's story. I mean,
Mhm.
it's just an honor to even be here on the panel. So thanks for having me. But yeah, so I play for the UWS. I play for the San Antonio Athenians, and I'm also a host of the podcast. And I also have another podcast called Title League FC, where I just interview professional soccer players from the MLS, specifically MLS.
Mm.
And I'm also a soccer analyst now for ESPN San Antonio. Things are starting to pop up and happen, so I'm got to keep tabs on what all I do now. There's a lot going on. I also do some production work and stuff on the side for film sets and things like that, commercials, whatever. But my goal really is, soccer reporting, things like that. So that's what I'm doing. And
Mm-hmm.
prior to that, I played at Mississippi State, and I played since I was 4 years old. I took a really long break because I had back surgery. And so I thought I had to call it quits, but I gave it a good old college try again this past season and made the team, made the travel team, and and then just decided to pursue media. Prior to that, I had been doing a lot of TV stuff with yoga. I'm a yoga instructor, so I'd been doing TV stuff there, PR,
Mm.
marketing, degrees international business, so in Spanish, and so yeah, it's kind of funny how things just kind of meander and change when you just follow what you're passionate about, right? So
Mhm.
here I am.
Okay, Katie. Well, now you made me feel bad. Like I feel like I had to do more this morning, or I had to go run
No,
10 miles and
no,
go feed cats in the
no,
streets or do something in Houston.
no,
That's amazing to
no.
hear that. I love to hear it too because I consider myself a busybody too, and Amanda as well. So let's go to Elisa, and maybe you want to give us your story is amazing to me. So I really want to hear that, and I want our listeners to really hear that because you're living, one of my dreams to own a team eventually. So tell me all about it.
Yeah. So I'll take a little bit of a reverse path from everybody else, and I'll start from the beginning. So I've been playing since I was, four probably. I'm
Mm.
a first gen immigrant. Well, my father's the immigrant, so I'm the first gen family member in the U.S. So Vicuna is the last name. I think it threw you because there's no tilde on the end.
And I
So
wanted to say Vicuna, like with the ñ, but I was like, maybe I don't
you're
want to
like, there's
add a
no
letter that's not
ñ.
really there. So, yeah.
You were spot on, Laura. So I've been playing since I was little. I grew up in South Dakota, didn't have a whole lot of infrastructure and development for women. I played with the boys till I was 15. Then there were finally enough girls that wanted to play, but I was 2 years older than the group, so we made the entire team play
Mm.
up a division. All the fun stuff there. Came to college, kept playing
Yeah.
recreationally. Eventually, I moved into refereeing. I went as high as refereeing amateur men's and women's. Then I realized that I absolutely hate being in the center and much prefer to be on the field. And I hate writing the game reports. So I was like, I'm done with this.
Uh-huh.
I'm very involved in the fan experiences. So I'm sure Amanda has formed some of my soccer experiences in life. I'm part of the Wonder Wall in Minnesota for Minnesota United. I was part of that before we came into MLS.
Well,
Part of it for, I'm very involved in the American Outlaws as well. So just really kind of getting that support and that growth for soccer in Minnesota. And, a few years ago, we were having conversations, the MLS, and they were talking a lot about, if you have an MLS team, you have to have the NWSL team. And we started asking around saying, hey, are we going to have an NWSL team? And people were saying, no, there's not that interest in women's sports. And obviously, I felt very different. So did a large group of us. And about 2 years ago, we all came together and said, let's make this a reality. How do we bring, a semi-professional team to Minnesota? How do we make this a reality? And there've been efforts in Minnesota before, but we really wanted to kind of flip it on its head and say, one of the big restrictions for some people is the financial investment and having a high
mm-hmm.
enough investor to be able to do it. And we said, well, what about if we do it from this community perspective? And so, you know, I think it was 30 of us that started, whittled down to 14, whittled down to 9, spent 2 years building it. And now here we are, about to launch in May. We've created Minnesota Aurora from scratch, essentially, brought the community in as part of the branding, all of that fun stuff. And so now it's a group of 9 of us who are really pushing this team into a reality in Minnesota and trying to make it the best experience that we can for everyone who is very, very excited to see this team in Minnesota.
That's amazing. I think that, when I read your bio, I was, with all of you guys, I'm just really inspired with everything. And I'm like, I really feel like women in general in sports and soccer are really growing, and just it's amazing to see more and more like women's names just up there, just with different parts of what really comes down to helping the sport grow. And an essential part of that is our players, right? Liz, Amanda. So, welcome. Thank you so much. And just, give us a little info about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm Liz Amanda Brown. I'm a goalkeeper here now for FC Austin Elite. I'll also start from the beginning. I'm actually a late bloomer. I started playing soccer when I was 14 years old, but I started training with, 14. I started training with the men's soccer team in my area as well, so that helped me, push my limits and everything like that, and helped me exceed further quickly, just because I like to push myself. After that, I went to college at Charleston Southern University, and decided that I wanted to dip my toe into professional soccer because I felt I just wanted more competition and everything like that. So I played in Colombia and in Spain and in Portugal. The last team I was with was Lank Villaverdense in Braga, Portugal. And I decided to come back overseas here to United States because I want, just to piggyback off the topic, to play in the United States, because I believe that there should be more foundation in the United States for women, especially after college. So that's a little bit about me. Not too much going on like everyone else, but
everybody has different things going on, and everything is amazing. Everything that we do is amazing. So let's just leave it at that. And I kind of want to go into, Amanda, because I know there's a lot of, not as many articles as I would like about, this new quote unquote league of the USL, W and the Super League. And I have Amanda, who's the president, here with me. So who else better to really explain to those who perhaps are just joining us or are new to women's soccer and just know perhaps the NWSL. There's not only one, but two different leagues coming into women's soccer here in the U.S. So Amanda, I want to see if you can briefly just kind of tell us the difference perhaps between, the W and the S League.
Yeah, I think that's really smart to help people understand the differences between the two, because they are really different leagues. The W League, which Minnesota Aurora is a part of, kicks off this summer. So it's all amateur players, so it's pre-professional, the league itself. So none of those players will be contracted paid a salary, basically, for that. It's an amateur league, right? So that means that they maintain their collegiate eligibility. So really, that gives players playing at the highest levels of the college game, or those who've recently left college and still want to continue to play their careers, a place where they can participate, excel at the highest levels of elite soccer, and like Minnesota Aurora, the highest level of soccer in their community, right? So really driving and creating those environments for players that doesn't affect their collegiate eligibility. So that's the W League, and that's this summer. That kicks off. What's the kickoff date? May 7th until July 20th. I have a helper in the room for the exact dates, because we've also got after this. He did gasp a little, Laura, when you said there weren't enough articles written about us. So
It's true, and that's why I wanted to kind of have a short intro before we really get into answering questions, because I want people to be kind of clear of what the different leagues really mean.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So that's this summer, that's 2022. In 2023, we'll launch the Super League, which is fully professional, contracted players who will be paid, and both the pay and the standards by which they participate and play in the league will be equivalent to our men's professional league, the championship. So it's Division II soccer. So it'll be across the country. We expect 10 to 12 teams when we launch across the country, doubling the number of professional teams already, in the United States, even in our inaugural year. So we're really excited about bringing women's professional soccer to even more cities across this country.
Yeah, it's exciting. I feel like, just as a person that follows women's soccer and as a reporter, a journalist, it's also something that is really exciting to really see and see kind of the outcomes, which we're going to talk about eventually. Let me go to the second phase of asking Katie asking Liz about the UWS, which is another league. And I don't know who wants to take the lead, the lead on explaining kind of how that league kind of works for viewers to really see that there's different leagues and different levels, and they all do
Uh-huh.
different things.
I guess I could start with it. So the UWS is another amateur league. It's nationwide. I believe we have 40 something teams, or we did. We lost a couple to the USL recently, USL-W. But I think that uh, our league has been an incredible source for people for a very long time. I mean, the league's been around for a while. Prior to that, we had WPSL, another amateur league that we could, players could go to after college, but that's pretty much what we do. Is we're a league for right after college. We're a league for scouts, people who want to see what the next up and coming talent has to offer. And so we've had a lot of girls go into the NWSL. We've had a lot of girls go across seas. But I think the biggest difference that I see between the UWS and the USL-W is just the pathway does seem a little bit
Mm-hmm.
stronger. Like you have that strong USL brand, you have I'm going to assume more financial stability from the whole USL league in general. So I think to me, it wasn't surprising in the very least, that Midwest United went over, DCFC went over. I mean, you can't blame people for doing what's best for them, right? So I think it's all
Mm-hmm.
very interesting. And I think, too, it's always important to realize there's enough room for everybody, right? Like there's enough
Mm-hmm.
space for everyone. And I think the more leagues that are out there, it's just another level for people to aspire to. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's all very interesting how, especially just recently, there's just so many opportunities showing up for women across the board in all leagues, and I'm sure we'll get into that. I don't want to jump ahead, but
Yeah. I'm
yeah,
like,
so,
Katie, please calm down. We're gonna get there.
you
We're
know,
gonna
like,
get there.
sit down a notch, kidding. Getting heated. Just kidding.
No. And I know, and I want to talk to Liz Amanda, just kind of the perspective as a player as well. I know that you just joined the team recently, joining the team and seeing that there's more leagues opening up. How does that feel as a player and just kind of your trajectory? Because I know you went out of the country to several countries, and
Yeah.
kind of like the reasoning of why you felt you had to leave the US to, get experience.
Yeah, so I found that because I'm not very well versed in the soccer world, especially women's soccer, especially since I started at a young age and I'm like the first generation in my family to play soccer. So I felt that overseas would give me more exposure and um, especially learn different styles of play and all those experiences. But I also came back to Austin several years ago to get more exposure here because I felt that overseas lacked even foundation as well. Um, they
Mm-hmm.
lacked the funding and the training and the facilities wasn't as strong as I thought it would be. So I just came
Mm-hmm.
back so I could um, find my own pathway into my own career and kind of just going back and forth and trying to figure out what's best.
Yeah, and kind of leading into that, I know you went to Colombia. I'm from Colombia, and I know that certain teams have really good facilities, like, because they use the men's
Exactly.
facilities, and they're trying to build the women's too. But you were in a smaller team, which the men's
Mhm.
are, if I'm not wrong, are still in I want to
Division
see, like, they
three.
call it
Yeah.
the B league. So how was your experience with the team that you were in Colombia, and how does it compare to perhaps the other teams here in, or the leagues here in the US?
Uh, I mean, the amenities were quite scarce in terms of like
Hmm.
accommodations. But then just like the team was strong because it's all girls that have the heart to play soccer. There's all girls that want to
Hmm.
expose themselves and get into the higher level. So the competition was there. It was just more of everything else that comes with
Hmm.
the stature of being a professional soccer player. Like you're expecting
Hmm.
um, just to have the best training and everything like that. And with my
Mm-hmm.
experience, it was very hard after I left because the captain of the team was killed like months later after I left. So it just kind of breaks my heart, especially because she was the one that was very charismatic, knew everybody there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like you don't want to put yourself in those situations where you're actually putting yourself in danger just to play the sport that you love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with that said, I'm sorry about the loss of your, colleague. And I kind of want to hand it off now to Elisa to kind of see now that you've been a member of the community of soccer and of women's soccer, and now as an owner to hear stories like Liz Amanda's. What are your, goals, or what do you really want to bring into women's soccer to help women really feel safe in a sense, and be able to get the experience that they want in their career as a professional soccer player?
It's what Liz Amanda says essentially validates everything we've been talking about the past 2 years and what we've wanted to create it, because what Minnesota Aurora started with is that we, apart from just the community based, notion of it, we wanted to build something that was women led and women centric.
Mm-hmm.
So giving women that opportunity to be on the front and the back side of the sport, be in the
Mm-hmm.
front office, be on the field. We wanted to see women be the head coach, be the coaching staff, to have, players be able to work with a woman, because a lot of players have had negative experiences with male coaches throughout their, the trajectory of their playing years. And we really wanted to give these players that opportunity to really develop themselves and push themselves forward and find a way for them to have that higher level of competition in their off season to keep making them stronger players without losing obviously
Mm-hmm.
their collegiate abilities and things like that. And another thing that's a really big focus for us is like equalizing the playing field so that it's accessible to everybody. So one of the things that Minnesota
Mm-hmm.
Aurora we've been committed to from the beginning is that none of our players are paying to play. If you get
Mm-hmm.
selected for our team, like, you are not paying to join our team. We've set it up so that we have kind of like host families and lodging arranged for, so that there's not that financial burden from that perspective. We've found a very awesome facility. So it's the TCO Stadium where the Vikings train, and that's one of our
Mm-hmm.
partners, and that's where our players are getting to play and get to spend all their time training and practicing. It's this amazing facility that, it talks exactly to what Liz Amanda was saying, is that you we've seen women over the years get kind of that second tier treatment and that second tier
Mm-hmm.
access to resources, even in the US, right? Going
Mm-hmm.
back a
Oh
few
yeah.
years, we've seen, like, when the US women's national team goes to play, and it's like they get the turf, like the beat up turf field, and the
Mm-hmm.
women aren't allowed to say, hey, we're not going to play on this because it's a dangerous field. But then the men go to a field and they're like, oh, this grass field is a little beat up, we can't play on that. It's like, okay, where is where is the equality here?
The
So
balance.
that's,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
yeah, that's something we really wanted to center with what we built, and making it community focused, but really putting women at the center and at the focus of this, on and off the field.
Awesome. And I think that also representation has to do a lot with it, right? Because a lot of the teams, like you mentioned, have been led by men in many senses. And I mean, we have to coexist in the world, right? But I also think that
Yes.
representation and women know what women also want and need in a sense, right?
Hmm.
But I kind of wanted to lead off what Katie kind of mentioned of kind of like having the pathway. And Amanda, if you can kind of expand on the pathway that I see that the USL kind of has from like the youth, and then like when they're older, and then, just kind of like, I feel like it's kind of like a school, right? There's, elementary or preschool, then middle school, and then high school, and then college kind of sense of the pathway that, the other leagues don't have.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm Liz Amanda. I'm so my heart shattered when you said that about your teammate, and I just want to share my condolences. And I don't know if I knew about that, and I'd love to. I know this isn't the conversation, to necessarily dig deeper into what you described happened in Colombia, but I'd really like to follow up with you after this and learn a bit more. Yeah. So, and
No, I mean,
thanks
I
for
think I
sharing
think
your.
this is a yes, this is the place that we discover things and really help grow. And that's why I really, again, I sound repetitive, but I really feel like inclusion is important, and really hearing the different stories of women that had have had to leave, like Liz Amanda, the country, to really feel like they can be professionals and get that experience, and then have somebody, like the president of the USL, really listen to stories, and that really inputs into what the future of other women will be like, with different stories, and making a difference in how other women will have their experiences in their professional career. So no, don't
Yeah.
apologize, Amanda. I think that this is a place to discuss everything and anything soccer.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think that's one thing, and I'll get to the pathway in a minute, but I think that's one thing. I've worked in a really different parts of the game. I've been in executive management for a long time. I've
Mm-hmm.
worked in digital media and content. But when I worked at the union, living in Europe and working in the union and seeing the state of women's soccer around the world, and even the differences at FIFA between the men's and the women's game and the standards that are upheld,
It's huge.
um, you know, are they're different. They're different, and I think we have to talk about them in order to affect change,
Mm-hmm.
right? So listening to those stories, really understanding the state of women's soccer. I mean, today's a really special day in America with
Yes.
the U.S. women's national team, right? I
Like,
mean, I
you're gonna
think we
mention
can
it, yes.
acknowledge
You
the
beat me to it,
yeah,
Amanda.
right? What's that?
I'm like, you beat me to it.
I know. I just wanted to acknowledge that and congratulate both the women and the federation for coming to where they are. After such a long period of time, to be in a positive place, we can move forward, and hopefully we see the ratification of the CBA in within the next month. And I think that's tremendous for all of us. Because it really, it inspires and motivates, but also, when I was working in the global game specifically, people ask me all the time what's happening in America, what's happening with the U.S. Women's National Team. Tell me about Megan Rapinoe. Tell me about, you know, Alex Morgan. And it's interesting, the impact that what we do here in the United States does have on the rest of the world, and the growth of the
It's
game
huge.
around the rest of the world. Yeah, and acknowledging and understanding what that game looks like. So it's, I'm thankful as Amanda could share her experience from Colombia, Spain, Portugal, all these other countries, because that informs the way that we build, and the way that we're building a league, a couple leagues, and the entire pathway, because it is something, what we're creating here at the USL is something that hasn't been built in the American soccer ecosystem before for women and
Mm-hmm.
girls, all the way through their playing experience. So, I really appreciated what Katie said earlier um, about the pathway and about the impact and how players see it, because we think a lot about the player experience here, and we're a league run by former players. We've played the game, we've experienced it, and so that's how we think about everything, that we do. It is a lens that we look through everything that we do here.
And I think that that's important because, like you mentioned, even as a reporter, like when I went to cover, the Women's World Cup, and I've been to cover a Men's World Cup, it is night and day. It is night and day. And as a woman, it's like, why is this, happening? Because the rhetoric that I know, I'm pretty sure you ladies as well have heard it, is that the men's team make more money. But for me, it's a vicious circle, right? Because if we don't invest in women's soccer, then how are we going to get better, and how are we going to get one more money? And then like, it's like a circle that's never ending. So it's kind of like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? And it's like a conversation that, I feel like it's never ending. And in the pathway, I think that it's something important, because I know there's other leagues, like, the English league for women, they also have two different leagues, and they've seen success. They're still, somewhat. I think there were 2017 is when they launched. I think the second one. So kind of seeing the evolution of the league play here in the U.S. is amazing, because as a national level, it's so impactful in other countries. But when you really look at, the league level, it's kind of like, that's interesting, and it's still growing, because, and it's not to talk bad about the NWSL, but with these new leagues coming in, where do you guys see the NWSL standing? Is it going to be a frenemy league? It's going to be a friend league? Is it going to be an enemy? How do you see these two leagues coexisting?
Well, I'll kick off. I mean, I think
Yeah.
Katie made a really strong point earlier about there's space for all of these opportunities for these professional leagues, for these players. And we know today there's 40,000 players playing college soccer in the United States
Mm-hmm.
today across all levels, right? And today there's only 12. Well, this year there will be 12 NWSL professional teams in this country. That's not nearly enough opportunities for those 40,000 women to play professional soccer. So, or to be professional coaches or be executives in soccer and grow the
Mm-hmm.
game. So we see, I mean, I think the opportunity here is creating, top level professional and amateur soccer across this country, in communities where people haven't had access to it. And I'm not just saying
Mm-hmm.
women, of course, the women players, but fans of women's professional soccer, which are men and women. There are tons of fans out there that just haven't had access before. And so I think it's a
Mm-hmm.
great opportunity, to really grow the game, more opportunities for people to be involved.
Yeah. I
I'll
also
follow
kind
up
of
a little
see
bit
it.
on. Oh, go ahead, Katie.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, it's the delay. So I also kind of see the USLW as a feeder league in the same way the USL feeds into
Mm-hmm.
the MLS. I feel like USLW isn't just another feeder into NWSL. I think it's one of those things where the coexistence of both leagues is going to be really important for the development of women's soccer in general. And I think that's why when we talk about there's space for everybody, it's not being competitive with each other. We have to help each other, support each other if we want to go up together, right? So that's what I see the USLW offering women's soccer that the UWS has done on a smaller scale, but I think the USLW is going to be able to do it on a bigger scale because of their association with USL in general. And what I love about that too is that you know with any kind of movement you try to create, a lot of times you need the power, the assistance of the people who have more power to help you get there. So what I'm trying to say is
Mm-hmm.
we need men as allies, right? And so I think with the USL adding the USL-W league, that was a really strong ally move in my eyes. And so I think I see that league a little bit differently now. I think I love that they're willing to help women in that way. And so I love everything the league's doing, especially like you said, offering more opportunities for women to work in the sports business as well, not just to be athletes. It's gonna change the scope of women's soccer in the US, I think, on a pretty big level. So I'm excited to see it.
Mm-hmm. The
But
impact
Elisa,
of
you
it.
had
Mm-hmm.
something to, yeah, you had
Elisa.
something to say. Sorry.
It was generally along those same lines, right? 15, 20 years ago, there just really weren't, unless you were number one, there was not a place for you outside of college in
Yeah.
the US to continue playing at that really competitive level and or make a career out of it as a player. And so I feel like these leagues are really showing that there really are the women that want to do this. That there is a market for it.
Mm-hmm.
Every time the U.S. women's national team comes here, the games sell out every time. And I'm like, that in and of itself shows you that there's this huge desire
Mm-hmm.
and want to see these women succeed. And as everybody has said, there are men along on this journey with us. Half of our founders are men. And I say that's, we can't do this alone, right? It needs to be a group effort of all of us moving forward together and having
Mm-hmm.
those really strong allies that see us and want to put us in those leadership positions and say, yeah, the women should be leading this. It doesn't always have to be a man that's doing it. And, having that support and that group that works together, I think is key. But I'm really looking forward to all these opportunities for women on and off the field to continue growing this sport, because with 40,000 women, I don't know why we can't look just like all the men's leagues in the US, and we know how many there are. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Liz Amanda, I kind of want to hear your perspective as a current player. Like, do you think that if these leagues would have been in place when you were younger, would that had an impact on you leaving, or would you had just stayed in the U.S.?
Yeah, that I probably that's why I've come back to play for FC Austin Elite just to have that opportunity to play at a higher level here. So that it's exactly why. Playing overseas was just to get that exposure, but
Hmm.
realizing that I couldn't play here, even with like how the United States is like has the best women's program in the world, and it's
Hmm.
a kind of a struggle to play United States past college to get that exposure to
Hmm.
play in Division 1 soccer. And I've played in Division 1 and everywhere else, but here. So that's why I'm here to, you know, that's why here in FC Austin Elite, that's my goal is to just get up there and to have these leagues come in and give more opportunity for the women. Yeah, it's going to make a big difference and change in the way women see the sport.
Yeah, I definitely also think that, after covering the game for so long, I feel like, and the many players that I've been able to really talk to and executives, I really do feel like it's going to have a huge impact um, in a lot of players that perhaps economically they can't pay the expensive, high school, not the high school leagues, like the leagues, after during high school to get that experience. I feel like this is also going to add to the tools that a lot of, minority players can't really get into just because the economic status is not the same as other players. And I
Yeah,
say that because it's one of the path. It's a path that Maria Sanchez took from the Houston Dash, different compared to perhaps other of her team members. So I think that it's important that also look at that impact in players that have talent, really want to be professional, but don't have that economic backing when they're young, and pay those
Yep.
expensive leagues and all that. So I really feel like it's going to make an impact that trickles down to younger girls, and to really see a clear pathway of to really, hey, there's stepping stones that I can take to eventually become a pro, which is something that I feel like was missing. That was kind of like, okay, well, yeah, I want to play for that team. So what do I do now? So I feel like now it's a little bit more clear. It has more stepping stones that are really there. And I feel like a lot of players are going to feel that backup of really having options of playing here in the US and growing, and not just, saying, well, this is it. I can't go beyond, high school, or I can't go beyond college. So I think that it's a huge step for women's soccer. And I also feel that, like Katie mentioned and Amanda, I think that it's important to really learn to coexist. And I feel like the leagues will bounce off of each other in some sort of way. But with that said, I do want to say that I am a little heartbroken, Amanda, because I took a look at the teams for the USL-W League, and Texas is nowhere to be found. Please explain. This is a Texas. This is the Striker Texas.
Yeah, no,
I
and
need
it's true.
more
So
info.
we're launching the W League in 44 markets this summer. To your point, I think all of them, if not most of them, are all of them are east of the Mississippi, right? So
Hmm.
yeah, it's right now. That's listen, it takes a while to build a league, doesn't it? We have a ton of interest from places in Texas, from all across the country, and I think one of the things we think a lot about is sustainability and how do we make sure that we do this right. So incorporating teams, in the right regions to make sure that travel costs were effective and make sure that we were really thinking about the sustainability and the growth of the league and building it out into markets
Hmm.
like Texas, into markets across the country was done the right way so that we weren't, launching a league and contracting or changing, but instead making sure that we had a really competitive season in 2022 and a very strong regional base of teams that you could compete against. And then we'll
Hmm.
listen to our teams, listen to our players and our owners and how did it go this summer, and then look to evolve and expand in the years to come.
No, and I didn't want to put you on the spot, although I did because it's Texas, but also in the sense of when I travel out of Houston, or I go to so many parks, I see so many little girls playing and little boys playing, which is Houston is a big soccer city in a sense, and I feel like when there's international play, either with like clubs or just national teams, there's a huge amount of people that show up. Austin has blown my mind with the craziness that the new MLS team has brought onto Austin, and in San Antonio, it's the place where a lot of the games, the Mexico games, are played, and I kind of want to get the opinion, I guess, of Katie and also Liz Amanda of how soccer is evolving in San Antonio and in Austin.
Ooh, I just got here.
With what you see, give me your opinion within the last 5 days of how soccer crazy is Austin.
Well, yes, it's awesome to see that like the whole stadium that we just passed when I passed through, and like to see the new stadium. And I followed a lot of the Austin MLS on social media, and seeing all the hype behind it, and the fans are so excited, and they're wondering, where's the women's team, where is the women's team to support. So yeah, that's what I hear a lot here. Yeah.
Yeah. Same, pretty much. The good thing is the Athenians have been around for about 5 years now, so they're finally starting to gain some traction. People are recognizing us as the the female soccer team of San Antonio. And so, we do some collaborations here and there with San Antonio FC, the USL team at times. So if going back to your question of how has soccer changed and what is it looking like now, for me, when I graduated college, I had nowhere to go. Like, I mean, I had back surgery, so I had to take a medical release, so I shouldn't have been playing anyway. But had I wanted to, I would have had no idea where to go, what to do, what to try. And the same was for my sister who played before me. She played in the late 90s, so the whole, Mia Hamm era. She was another one of those trailblazers. And it's just crazy to me how soccer has evolved so much since then. It went from you're lucky to get on a college team to, there's social media everywhere, and you can get on a semi-pro team or you can get on a pro team just out of social media. I literally hand wrote a letter to my coach telling him I wanted to play there, and then he came and saw me at a tournament, and that's how I got on the team. So, like, things have just changed so much, but for the better. I mean, there's soccer everywhere. There's tons of academies. San Antonio FC has an academy. The Athenians have just started an academy as well. So we're starting them really young. We're building it from the ground up. It's not one of those things where we're taking it season by season. We're looking really far ahead to see, how can we really make change in the city, and how can we really provide the exposure that San Antonians need, because a lot of the players at San Antonio FC have been recruited from other cities. It's kind of known in Texas that the main soccer cities are Dallas, Houston, and Austin. And so anytime someone comes out of San Antonio, it's kind of like a shock, right? But what's really cool is we ended up in the national championship last year. We were in the top 4 of everyone in the league, and that was just a huge deal for San Antonio. And I think when we see things like that, we have hope that we can go bigger, that we can do better, that we can create something with our local talent that can start really challenging the Dallas and Houston markets. So yeah, it's changed, and it's changed for the better.
And then talking about, going into talking about the better and just doing better for women in the sport. And I'm sure all of you are aware of all the scandals and the problems that the NWSL, had in the last seasons. And it's just been something that, I think that the league has been around long enough to really have really implemented things that were, going to protect the players. And I feel like they're playing the catch-up game instead of really doing things prior to those things happening. And I kind of want to get the feeling of what you guys think and especially because I have Amanda here sitting right here and I have an owner, what what is the plan of the USL leagues to really make players feel comfortable and safe, having kind of like the example of what has been going on that took so long for the players to really be heard, with the problems and the issues that they had.
I'll steal the hot seat from Amanda on
I'm
that
like,
one
don't
for
make
a
me raise your
second.
hands. Come on.
So this has been a very active conversation with our board of how do we get up in front of this, and how can we kind of
Exactly.
stop it as much as we can, if not like mitigate it from the start. And so in my other life, is what we'll call it, I focus very heavily on ethics and compliance in the business world. And so one of the things that I have, that we've really been working on is setting that tone and that culture where this is just not acceptable at all, where there's not that room to say, oh, we can look the other way, which starts with codes of conduct sometimes, and having that ability to enforce something and say, this action is actually prohibited here. If you violate this, we can terminate your contract. There doesn't have to be this kind of gray area of back and forth of, if we can show that you're not meeting those standards and you're not adhering to them and you're not meeting our values as a team, we're not going to tolerate that behavior, because for us, it really is, player centered. We want it to be a safe place for women to grow in the sport. We don't want, I would, maybe a broad statement, I don't think any team wants to be involved in this, but I would say that we very specifically have zero tolerance for any situation where any woman on our team, or any man, feels uncomfortable, or that their own kind of like personal safety and security is being threatened.
Amanda, you want to add on anything?
Yeah, I actually, Laura, sorry I didn't chime right in. I thought Katie and Liz Amanda were gonna speak up too, because I'm to your point, like, it's so important that we're listening to players and we're getting the feedback of those who've been either affected or in communities that have been affected, or players, and to understand what it is that they're looking for to create those safe environments. I think Elisa said really importantly, establishing culture. And that comes, through her point, through policy, but importantly, the education piece of it. And zooming out a bit, even from our context here in the United States, and even more broadly, like, this isn't like a league specific issue. It isn't just in our country. This is an issue around the world. That players, leagues, federations, FIFA, everyone, it's is starting to I don't know, recognize maybe, and surely should have been recognized before, but here we are. And so I think, for us, we do look at it and say, what can we learn, and how can we put policies, programs, and systems in place to ensure the health and safety of our athletes, our administrators, our coaches, our executives, everyone across the board, because it is a culture that comes, with the responsibility. I feel a great weight of responsibility to ensure that we're thinking through these responsibilities that we do have to our athletes.
Yeah, and I kind of do want to listen to Liz Amanda kind of talk about, because I know that, well, I'm Colombian, right? So I follow closely a lot of the women's league over there. And I know that there was an example for the national team that they gave them extra large sizes shirts for a game. So they couldn't even give the national women's team shirts that fit, and that was a big uproar, because it's something that, like Amanda just mentioned, it isn't something that only happens here in the US. Although we tend to focus, because obviously I'm living here, I follow a lot of the NWSL, and just, it was a big scandal with the last seasons, that the league has kind of had a rocky, interesting seasons. So that's why it's one of the focuses that I wanted to kind of bring up with you guys, and I want to bring up with Liz Amanda. How does that affect you, perhaps, as a player, and also with Katie, like, when you're a player, what are you thinking? Like, should I go into a culture that is more worried about, perhaps hushing players, than really just getting in front of it, kind of like Elisa kind of just mentioned.
It can be enraging, especially being a part of that culture when I was in Colombia. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's very hard to talk about, definitely, because you don't want to be a part of that culture. You want to be able to speak up and everything like that. And when you do, it is hushed. And then um, it's it's definitely hard even to talk about right now.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that I've been through when I was over there, but um, yeah, it's just a lack of education and undervaluing the women's ability or the right to be able to play in the standard that men play. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's really all I would like to talk about.
No, yeah, yeah, and I
Yeah.
kind of did want to, I mean, just talk as much as you feel comfortable. And you said you were also in Portugal. How was your experience there?
Portugal, the standards were a little higher, of course, but it's still the same. Still the inequality, not really giving the same kind of uniform
Mm-hmm.
that the men would have, not using the same buses. Um, yeah, it was kind of like, in one, my experience with the bus, that's one of the examples is that once the men's season's finished, we weren't able to
Mm-hmm.
transport with the team bus anymore. We had to find our own transportation to the soccer fields and stuff like that. So that's one example there that is just inequality. But yeah, it's from the uniforms to using the amenities in the clubhouse and everything like that. It's different and it's
Yeah,
not
and you have
okay.
international experience. Yeah, you have international experience, and you've come with, the experience that you have in different countries that are still basically the same problems, inequality, like you just mentioned. I don't know
Yeah.
if Katie, you want to chime into that with your experiences,
Yeah.
perhaps?
Yeah, first, just want to say, Liz, Amanda, I'm really sorry about that. I think, unfortunately, there are so many women who have had to experience, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
abuse or assault, anything, just unfair treatment in general, inequality. It's it it hurts me to hear every time I hear a story from somebody else about it, even though it's super prevalent. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I think about is how a lot of times as a younger athlete, you don't really know when you're being abused if you've never really had those experiences or if you've grown up a certain way. I think one of the biggest tools that could benefit athletes is having their own education of somebody giving them the education, the therapy, the sports psychology counselor to help them navigate those moments where, what might abuse look like, even if it's subtle? What does it look like when somebody is playing mind games in this way or that way? When I
Mm-hmm.
what the reason I'm bringing this up is because I look at the way I approach the game as a younger player versus now as an older player, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it's a lot easier for me to identify things when they're not okay, and when I can identify them and when I know for a fact and truth they're not okay, I'm a lot more likely to say something about it. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a tough line to walk, like, and I'm not saying all of the responsibility should be on the players. 100%, these coaches, staff, everybody needs to be vetted. And I
It's a
think that
culture.
is yeah, it's an entire culture, and that's the only way. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, this carries across multiple industries. It's not just soccer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just business sports. This happens in media, it happens in all kinds of places. And
Yeah.
I think unless we start speaking up and putting a firm hand down on all of this stuff, it's not going to change. And then just speaking to media, the way the media highlights all of this stuff can be especially irritating, because they tend to
Mm-hmm.
hyper focus on what's most dramatic or crazy. Like there was even a point in time where a player in Europe, I can't remember her name so bad, but a player in Europe was accused of jumping her teammate and breaking her legs. And like they hyper focused on that. Turns out
Yeah.
that was not the case at all. Nobody ever followed up to talk about what actually happened. And that's the kind of stuff I see a lot from ESPN FC, Fox Soccer. Those are the things that need to improve. And so, like, I think, there's just so many elements that need help. It can be overwhelming at times, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one step at a time. It's one voice at a time. It's one, process at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And we're getting there. Things are getting better,
Mm-hmm.
but again, it does suck when I hear people are going through it, because I can definitely relate to that as well.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I do want to thank Liz Amanda again to for sharing that, because it's not easy. It's not sharing it with complete strangers. It's not easy sharing moments that perhaps you don't want to relive. But um, like we mentioned, I think that it's important, especially with media, and I think that the Striker Texas, not to do a cheap plug-in, but I really do believe that the Striker Texas has done a very well job of being honest and being really
You
upfront
have,
with
yeah.
things that happen. And I think that things need to be talked about, whether they're uncomfortable or not,
Right.
especially with women's league. I think that if a player says this
Right.
happens, I think that it's also a responsibility of journalists as myself to really go through and really investigate and see what's going on, because I know that the media can be criticized and say, they overhype certain things and stuff like that, but there's smaller medias that have to guide the way with the bigger medias, because they just really want to highlight women's soccer. I think that they're doing it perhaps in the wrong manner, just because they're really not focusing on different things that the league really means. And with stories like Liz
Right.
Amanda and like what Katie just mentioned, that players need to be given tools in a sense also to say this is not okay. And I'm sure that the USL leagues will also be a place that future players or current players can really look into and say, well, this is how it works in this league. This is not okay what I'm living through. This is not okay what they're doing to me. This is not okay. There's more options for me there, because I've heard so many stories of athletes say, well, this is my only option. If I don't go to this country and if I don't leave, I'm never going to make it in the league. I'm never going to be a professional. So this is something that sometimes I've talked to players and they've said, well, they didn't pay us for 3 months. They didn't do this, they didn't do that, but we didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to be blacklisted. And I think that with
yeah,
everything really being honest and open, and the things that have been kind of put out there that's happened in the professional league here in the US and other countries, I think that things need to be talked about so they're made better. And I'm glad that Elisa's here
Right.
with us and Amanda's here with us, and that Katie and Liz Amanda are sharing their stories, because I feel like it's been an impactful talk. And I think that all of us leaving with different stories and just life experiences of all of us, I think that we're going to go out there and really try the best to make women's soccer or women's sports in general just a safe, good place for women to want to be in and flourish in.
yeah, to do
Right.
something that they love.
And I and exactly. And I do just want to add, Striker, you guys are solid. The media reference was not towards Striker, for the record. You guys
I'm
have done
like,
a really
Katie,
great job of providing non-biased coverage. Yeah, no, great stuff.
thank you, thank you. No, and I didn't say that for you to, tell us we're amazing. I know we're amazing, but it does feel good when somebody else says it, because it really does encourage, local journalists and women journalists and minority journalists, colored journalists to really go out there and try to find those stories that really matter, and that need to be told in a certain way. So we're coming to an end. I don't know if you guys want to share anything, just to kind of invite people to support women's soccer, to really follow and keep attentive when the USL have some teams perhaps in Texas, maybe next season. Um, so yeah,
No, thank you so much for having me, especially on this platform. I know I kind of came in here last minute, and I appreciate you all for listening and everything like that. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
And
Thank you
thank you
for
thanks
for all
sharing
the
your
Amanda. Thank you.
perspectives.
information.
yeah, yeah. You've all been an inspiration, every one of you. So thank you for including me as well. Great chat.
Thank you.
Yes, I think that hopefully we'll be back on soon just to keep talking about women's soccer. I'm really excited, not only as a woman, but also as a journalist, to really see this new league bring so much. I really feel like it brings hope and it brings so much energy into women's soccer in general, not only in the US, because I feel like a lot of players will want to come internationally into the US to really have an opportunity, a good, solid opportunity. So I'm really, really excited, looking forward to really seeing this league start up. And like I said, I know, Amanda, you're gonna say, Laura, I get it, Texas, but I live in Texas and I have to fight for it, right?